College campuses across the United States erupt into chaos. Tensions escalate amidst pro-Palestine protests. Scenes of unrest grip the once tranquil campuses. In a wave of defiance, students are demanding a ceasefire in Gaza, turning campuses into battlegrounds. Will order be restored to these once prestigious campuses, or are they too far gone? Sky News Digital Originals presents College Campus Chaos. The chaos on college campuses has continued into its second week as the semester draws to a close. It all kicked off at Columbia University in New York with students staging a pro-Palestine protest. The protesters then inspired further college campus displays across the country. The chairman of Israel's main Holocaust museum offered a strong rebuke of the president at Columbia University, writing, "When it becomes crystal clear that abolishing the existence of the Jewish state is a prevalent ideology in Columbia, the president of the institution cannot remain silent. A great moral conflict was delivered to your doorstep. Rise to the occasion, lead with moral principles, not only administrative regulations. Speak up."
Well, the last couple of weeks have seen a serious escalation of events on campus. A mob took over and set up an encampment a couple of weeks ago. They terrified Jewish students on campus. They were shouting for Tel Aviv to be burned to the ground to globalize the Intifada. Jewish students I've spoken to really wonder whether it's safe for them on campus. 134 Israeli students said they fear for their lives. And just now the situation's escalated further, with a few dozen protesters bashing into Hamilton Hall, breaking the glass, barricading the building, and shutting down the campus.
What is happening right now on college campuses in America and around the world is not happening by accident. It is happening by design. This is a conclusion of a coordinated and well-funded campaign that has been waged against the West and against Israel for over 30 years. So what Israel's enemies and the enemies of the West, really, the people and the entities and the countries that do not like democracy and anything that we hold dear, what they have concluded is that they're not going to be able to take Israel down militarily. And they've shifted the gear and shifted their plan to taking Israel down geopolitically, to basically delegitimize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And they've been doing this for over 30 years in academia and on college campuses. We know about this. We've known about this for a very long time. Their plan was to make Israel toxic, to literally turn Israel toxic, because Israel is on the front line of a worldwide war in the Middle East against radical Islam. And they need to take Israel down in order to move to the West. And that is one of the things that we've been trying to tell the West for a very, very long time. The way they did it is to use age-old anti-Semitic tropes that everybody had kind of heard for thousands of years. Every Jew had heard for thousands of years. So you take out the word Jew and you put the word Zionist, and it's all clear. You can do whatever you want. So what we say about anti-Semitism is that it's not simple racism. It's a shape-shifting conspiracy theory. And it has shifted throughout the generations. Every time it changes a little bit. And in the past few generations, it had shifted to anti-Zionism. And this is nothing short of a plan to move forward jihadi ideology in the West. And we all need to be extremely careful, because the Jews are first, and then Israel, and then the rest of the world. So we're standing here saying we need to fight this evil with all our might, because this is literally a war against every value that we love.
It is so crazy. These people really see themselves as the targets of the people they're supporting, like Hamas. Those are the terrorists. I don't know who they think started this thing, but it was Hamas. That's whose side you're on. And by the way, they're out there on their hands and knees doing like the Muslim call to prayer. You know what Hamas and its supporters would like to do? They'd love to bring Sharia law to a town near you, where not only will you be on your knees praying to Allah all day, but you'll be covered head to toe as a young woman. And if you have the temerity to get more Western in your thought or your behavior, you could be honor killed, quote unquote, by a family member, and there would be no prosecution. Welcome to Sharia. All right. Stand up, get off your knees, and stop being such a dumbass, because the world that you're trying to usher in is that world. And the very people you are supporting will want you dead if you happen to be just a little bit gay, just a little bit non-binary, or just a little bit of a woman who may not be up for the head-to-toe covering and the hijab 24/7.
I mean, these are the future leaders of America, unfortunately, in many cases, right? This is one of the elite credentialing institutions across the country, across all sorts of things. I mean, Columbia, and one of the things I was thinking about is Columbia is also a big teachers college, right? It's one of the top ones in the city of New York. These are going to be, these are people who aren't just going to go on and lead, important potentially lives. They're going to be working in the trenches with everyday people, with American children, right? And nonprofits across New York City. These are the next generation of a really esteemed class of well-sung, well-credentialed, well-resumed people. And that's really horrifying to think what they're going to do when they move on from this.
There's so many dynamics that are almost like a petri dish at these universities over there, where there's the impact of immigration and importing some of these allegiances that are spilling out. There's sort of this coddling culture that's happened at these universities. There's the way protests, I think, were amplified and supported during the summer riots with BLM. I think that culture is carrying over, and you just have weak leadership at the top of the university, and all those things put together is leading to some pretty stunning and outrageous stuff that we're seeing.
The way this coordinated effort is happening on campuses, it's a real problem because it's also divided by age. The older generation is this in America, and normal Americans and normal Australians are looking at it going, what on earth are they doing? They see that it's violent, they understand jihadi terrorism, they understand the jihadi culture. They were around when 9/11 happened, so we know who Osama bin Laden is. But the younger generation that are getting their information, their news, and all their knowledge from TikTok, they have no idea. So literally right now, Zionism had turned into a curse word. Zionism, which is literally Israel's right to exist, that's it, is now been presented as a movement that necessitates the genocide of Palestinians. And that is not just not true, it's literally a blood libel, because people are convinced now that it is true, in the same manner that they were convinced in the 1500s that Jews are using the blood of Christian children to make their matzahs. It's exactly the same thing. So we have anti-Semitic tropes that are rehashed today and are causing all this violence on college campuses. And the young generation don't understand that their minds have been hijacked with the nefarious forces that are going to, as you said, to that person who threatened to murder Zionists. He would be the first one to go if the jihadi get their will.
It's absolutely getting out of hand. It's happening across the country. It's happening here in Boston, the college I graduated from. Emerson College is all over the news here because its students were blocking all kinds of public areas, and then they were arrested. A bunch of them were arrested, over 100 of them. And the college actually put out a statement saying that there will be no consequences at all from the college for the arrested students. So, the college is just, defying the police, essentially, who made these arrests. This is even happening in red states. It's happening in universities all across Texas. And Chris, this is exactly why college enrollment in this country has gone down significantly in the last few years, because parents and younger kids who are in middle school and high school, they see this stuff in the news and they realize it makes absolutely no sense to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to these elite daycares where you don't really even learn anything, and you are bombarded with this radicalism. It's dangerous at this point. But yes, the chaos has gotten out of hand, and I have no sympathy for these colleges. You reap what you sow. They have allowed this behavior to go on unchecked for decades now, and this is sort of the crescendo of it. So I hope they're enjoying the monster they created.
I think it's very clear that this movement's never been about a ceasefire in Gaza. The day after the October 7 massacre of 1,200 Jewish civilians, Columbia professor described it as awesome and astounding. A couple of dozen student groups sought to justify the attack as resistance against so-called settler colonialism. 170 professors wanted to recontextualize the events of October 7. So from the beginning, this was not a pro-peace movement. And that's become even clearer over the last couple of weeks and months. when the Houthis were attacking shipping, these protesters were chanting and cheering them on. They burned American flags. This has never been a pro-peace movement. That's just been a tactic as part of a broader campaign to delegitimize and undermine the existence of Israel as a state.
What started at Columbia University quickly turned into a nationwide shutdown at campuses across the country. At least 675 students were arrested across multiple different universities across the United States. The protesters are demanding a ceasefire in Gaza and that their schools stop doing business with Israel. Whilst some protests were peaceful, a dark anti-Semitic underbelly was exposed amongst some protesters.
Well, it's had a very significant impact on my Columbia experience. I mean, this is everywhere over the last couple of weeks that makes it difficult to go to class, and certainly that the learning environment's been heavily impacted. And I'm horrified that this would happen at an institution with such a long and storied history. The violent demonstrators right now took over Hamilton Hall, which traces its history to Alexander Hamilton, a man who studied at Columbia over 200 years ago. As to the future, I am scared because I think so many young students have bought into a narrative that delegitimizes the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, and too many universities hire and protect professors who express such vile viewpoints that create unsafe environments for Jewish and specifically Israeli students. I'm heartened to see that Congress has begun to take action on this issue, with both Democrats and Republicans calling forward university presidents for congressional hearings, speaking to the Education Secretary about Title VI funding cuts to universities which fail to protect Jewish students. Donors, I think, are starting to call out the university as well and to cut their donations if the universities fail to act. So I think that there is some hope. There will be pressure on the administration to act on this issue, but I'm very worried about the kind of messages that students receive on these campuses right now.
It's obviously the perfect storm of all of this convergence happening right now in America. There's no doubt that, look, here's what had happened. The goalpost had moved. The terms of kind of like the how we see reality have shifted. And this Marxist, as you said, ideology and this concept of seeing the world through the oppressor and the oppressed and through melanin in the skin. So it used to be about merit, about the culture, the content of your personality, even about class, about money. That's no more the case. It's now about melanin in the skin and oppressor and oppressed. And once you put when you look at the world through that parameter, the Jewish community doesn't fit. We don't fit in that. And it's very interesting that these kids on college campuses, they think they're speaking truth to power. They think they're taking down the patriarchy. They think they're doing the best thing in the world and something that is new and exciting. Yet they're rehashing age-old anti-Semitic tropes and picking on the smallest minority in the world that has always been picked on. So it's a little ironic that they're even doing that without understanding what it is that they're doing and not understanding that they really are the useful idiots in the West that are promoting an ideology that is out to get them.
What we're seeing here is so egregious, so disgusting. And again, this is not people being critical of Israel. This is open anti-Semitism calling for the destruction and killing of Jews, right? I mean, Rita, you remember my video where I went to a college campus here in the US with hidden cameras, and I raised money to murder Jews across America. I raised money from these lunatics, from these evil lunatics, to kill Jews, blow up Jewish schools, blow up Jewish hospitals. This is what we're dealing with. And Rita, I want to make another point on this, because I think what some people may fail to grasp this very clear axiom, which is that the people who hate Jews in Israel, you know who they also hate? They hate America. And if you did a Venn diagram of the people who are anti-Israel, the people who are protesting in these campuses, and you ask them the same question, do you hate the United States? The Venn diagram, the two diagrams with the exact same circles. They are burning American flags there too, by the way. That's also flags that are being burned. So you're talking about an institutional problem that these universities have. And by the way, You know whose fault it is? The university's fault. These professors, these administrators have been feeding these students garbage for years. Garbage in, garbage out. What do you expect? Look, that NYU student, I mean, I thought NYU was hard to get into. She's a clear moron, right? This is what the problem is. They're literally stopping Jews. These people are stopping Jews from entering the university campuses, from going to classes. How this is legal and how they are not. Look, the police have been called to some campuses. They have to clear all of them out now, and you have to expel them from all of these campuses. Expel them, Rita.
It shows clearly that being highly educated isn't a sign of high intelligence. You have these young people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to basically be sheep and to not engage critically. The thing is, you cannot believe that these people are acting in good faith, because I actually don't believe they understand anything about the conflict and the nuance and the history and all of that. You can have dissenting opinions, but it has to come from a position of being educated. And also part of that means that you don't disparage someone who has a contrary opinion. That's what being an adult is, and having people with different opinions. You should be able to disagree peacefully and not shout things that either have no basis in truth or they have no idea what they're saying. To have someone like Susan Sarandon, who is not an expert on anything, standing there having these presumably highly educated people shouting these things, it's completely bizarre.
Students are either not turning up to campus and trying to do their studies remotely, or if they are, they're doing whatever they need to do to mask their Jewish identity, which should not be. I mean, I'm horrified to think that that's the case, but you know, if they're not wearing any, you know, visibly identifiable insignia of the Jewish faith, they're not. If they might have a Star of David necklace, they're not wearing that. They might wear a kippah. If they're a man, they're not wearing that. All of that is, I think, terrible as it is, because I think, you know, that they already feel a sort of a hostile environment towards them. And, you know, of course, we've discussed this a number of times on your show, but regardless of what you think of the conflict in the Middle East, it's entirely wrong to be holding Jewish people responsible for the conduct of the State of Israel, whether you think it's right or wrong, just as it would be entirely irresponsible to hold Afghan Australians responsible for the conduct of the Taliban, or Syrian Australians responsible for the conduct of the Bashar al-Assad regime. Once we allow that sort of thing to happen, all we're going to do is provide a mechanism to import every foreign conflict imaginable here into Australia, which will be at the tremendous cost to our functioning and our harmony as a society.
I just saw a video earlier today of a UCLA student who was being blocked from entering a university building by a bunch of protesting students, deliberately not letting the student into the building because he was Jewish and wearing a Star of David necklace. This is a tuition-paying student being denied access to his university. And of course, incidents like this are happening at many universities right now. It's disgusting. It's despicable. And where have the Democrats been calling out anti-Semitism? Yeah, a couple of them are saying some things now because they have to, and the pressure is just too great to ignore. But they have allowed this anti-Semitism to fester. And I know a lot of Jewish Democrats who at this point are looking seriously at the administration and their lack of response here and wondering what they're going to do in November. They certainly don't support Trump. They're Democrats, but they're scared of what's going on. And the anti-Jewish hate that is festering within their party is appalling.
I think for the last several years, universities have shown a willingness to crack down on those who would create an unsafe or uncomfortable environment for minority students. And the question which I ask is, why don't the universities enforce the same standards for Jewish students? If Klansmen were intimidating black students on campus, there would be a police presence within minutes. Same if there were anti-gay marches in response to the Orlando massacre of 50 LGBT Americans. We would never tolerate attacks on students for the actions of the government from the countries where they originally come. And I think there are terrible double standards on campus, which universities have used to justify not acting over the last 7 months. And now we're seeing the consequences of continuing to create a permissive environment for anti-Semitic speech and for pro-terror students and student groups who would defend the actions of Hamas on October 7 and who would now try to create an unsafe environment for Jewish students.
It's not just American colleges being rocked by these protests. We've seen prestigious institutions descend into chaos around the world, from London to Paris and right here in Australia.
I've been troubled to see the protests on the Columbia University campus and the clear environment of intimidation and menace that's being directed at Jewish students and Jewish faculty members there. And I do hope that the Columbia University authorities will take a firm stand against this, because whilst students have a right to free expression, they don't have a right to disrupt the studies of others or create an environment that's threatening to other parts of the student body. And I've been alarmed, although not wholly surprised, to see students at Sydney University, unimaginative and unoriginal as they are, copy this sort of tactic and seek to import it into Australia. But I've been horrified to see mainstream politicians, or people who purport to be mainstream politicians, and representatives in the federal parliament and the state parliament from the Greens political party, seemingly egg on and, seek to oxidise this kind of social division and amplify it here in Australia. I don't think, as you said in your introduction, regardless of what your views are on the rights and wrongs of this conflict, I don't think contributing to social division here in Australia is the right way to approach it at all.
In the centre of the university, there's a camp with tents, there's megaphones, there's people standing and taking over that whole area. If anybody has been to the University of Sydney, it's the main kind of area, the icon of Sydney University, and that's where they are. They have huge banners, they have flags. They pretty much took over the centre of the university.
How does it feel as a Jewish academic going there every day?
It's very triggering. You walk over the bridge and there's posters everywhere. I walk to my classrooms, there's posters everywhere. Posters that are calling for the destruction of the state of Israel, well, at least the dismantlement of the state of Israel, calling for boycott, calling for intifada, and it's everywhere. And it's allowed.
Yeah. Andy, you've been at the University of Sydney, as I said, you just left in February. What was it like? What were the experiences like for you turning up on a daily basis, particularly in the wake of October 7th?
Look, after October 7th, it was a very scary place to be. There were tables popping up everywhere. There were posters that were popping up. There were students who were very anxious and very scared. I'm also the parent of a current University of Sydney student, and my son, who is at the university, has days where he doesn't feel safe. The thing that hit me as a parent was when they got the students, this was back in October, November, got an email to say that campus security would escort them between classes for their own safety.
Wow. So this an email came out from the management?
To the university, to the students. And as a parent, my son showed this to me, and I wrote an email and said, I've been fine up until now. This was the point at which it really upset me. Because if you're telling me you can't protect my child walking between one lecture and another. And the university came back with a lot of answers and platitudes. They talked about how they have public transport. They run buses between campus and the train station for any women who feel unsafe to walk at night. This is no different. We protect our students. But I can tell you that as a Jewish parent, that's not how it felt.
Obviously, we do support free speech, but calling for al-Yahud and calling for intifada on university campuses makes Jewish students feel impeccably unsafe to attend university. This is something that's their right to do, and even in Australia in 2024, you have Jewish students who are fearful of attending class at university.
Refusing to leave the campus and still carrying on like the footage that we just watched. But if you don't stamp it out when these things first rear their head, that is what you end up with. People literally camping out, feeling fully entitled to be there, to be loud and proud, chanting anti-Semitic slogans and holding up signs literally saying, come kill these people.
Yeah. There were Jewish students who actually pushed, shoved, kicked on campus by their fellow students.
Yeah.
I don't know why, if you're a Jewish person, you would ever send your child to Columbia University, much less pretty much any other university in the United States. And as you said, we all remember back to that congressional hearing where university presidents said that anti-Semitism was allowed or not allowed depend on the context of it. So you're very right. This has been going on for a long time and it's never been properly dealt with. It's been allowed to fester. And we all know what starts on the university campus eventually sort of seeps out into the everyday community. It's done that already.
It has.
But I mean, these are very dangerous times and we're seeing what's happening today is an echo of what we saw back in the 1940s?
Yeah, the universities have essentially been complicit in it. And we've had recent examples, including here in Australia, where universities have stopped certain people from giving lectures, Jewish people from giving lectures, or Israelis.
Yep, University of Melbourne,
because they're worried about the safety of those individuals. But we can't ensure your safety because we're going to have protesters rock up. As soon as you say, well, you can't come and talk here because we're worried about what the protesters are going to do, the people who are trying to stop you from speaking,
they've won.
You send the message that the protesters have won. They've thrown their weight around. The university's gone, oh, God, we can't possibly deal with this. They've won. They've been told that if you make enough noise, if you throw your weight around enough, if you hate Jews enough, that we'll just let you do whatever the hell you want. And once you get to that point, you don't have academic freedom, you don't have freedom of speech, and you actively encourage hate. You'd almost think that the universities want that, wouldn't you?
Students protesting and making their voices heard around political issues is nothing new. But since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, a dark underbelly of anti-Semitism has been exposed. Many Jewish students now feeling unsafe and unwelcome at their schools. And as the Israel war rages on, we can expect more college campus chaos.